crimson sky above Nazera burned with the fury of a dying world. Cathera pressed her trembling blue fingers against the cold metal of the quantum communicator, watching through the reinforced windows as her beautiful capital city crumbled under waves of writhing black creatures. The Vorth swarm moved like living shadow across the crystalline spires, devouring everything in their path. "Get that transmission out now," shouted General Dex from across the bunker, his voice cracking with desperation. "Before they breach." The shield's Cathara nodded, her throat tight with fear. She had practiced this message 100 times, hoping she would never need to send it. Outside, explosions rocked the government complex as another district fell to the ravenous horde. "This is an emergency transmission to any civilized species willing to help," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I am Cathara, of the Zilani Confederation. The Vorth swarm has consumed 7 of our worlds in the past month. Our fleets are destroyed. Our colonies are ash. We have perhaps days before total extinction." Massive impact shook the entire building. Through the smoke and debris, Cathara could see the writhing mass of Vorth bioships descending like a plague of locusts. Each ship pulsed with organic machinery, their hulls covered in feeding tubes and razor-sharp appendages designed for one purpose: consumption. "We offer everything we have," Cathara continued, tears streaming down her face. "Our technology, our resources, our knowledge of hyperspace routes. Please, someone, anyone, help us survive." She released the transmission and watched it scatter across the quantum network, racing toward distant stars at faster than light speeds. General Dex placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. "The Galactic Council," he asked. "They declared us a lost cause yesterday," Cathara whispered. "The Altarian Empire, the Centauri Federation, even the Trade Consortium. They all said the same thing. Helping us means sharing our fate." The transmission bounced from relay to relay, reaching dozens of civilized worlds. On Altair Prime, the military commanders deleted it without opening. The Centauri Federation marked it as spam. The wealthy merchants of the Outer Rim blocked all communications from Zilani space entirely. But one signal, weakened and distorted from its long journey, finally reached a small blue-green planet spinning quietly in the galactic backwater. Earth sat alone in its corner of space, surrounded by automated warning beacons that flashed the same message in 100 languages. Deathworld quarantine zone approach forbidden. The planet looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over green continents and blue oceans, but the galaxy knew better. This world had spawned a species so violent, so unpredictable, that every civilized government had agreed to contain them. The humans were allowed to exist, but never to spread in an underground command center beneath Seoul. Admiral Daeho Kim studied the holographic display showing Earth's defensive grid. At 62, he had seen 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. His weathered face bore scars from the Martian rebellion, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a man who understood violence intimately. "Sir Lieutenant Yunbai," Park called from her station. "We're receiving an emergency transmission from outside the solar system." Daeho frowned. "The quarantine has been absolute for 30 years. Unknown species, sir. They claim to be under attack by something called the Vorth swarm." The Admiral walked over to Yunbai Station and watched as Kithra's desperate message played on the screen. He studied the alien's blue features, the terror in her large eyes, the burning city behind her. "Analysis?" he asked quietly. "Computer. Confirms the transmission is genuine, sir. The destruction appears real. Our deep space sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from that sector consistent with orbital bombardment." Daeho rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "What do we know about this Vorth swarm?" "Nothing in our databases, sir. But based on the transmission, they appear to be some kind of consuming organism. Biological ships, hive mentality, systematic destruction of entire civilizations." The Admiral was silent for a long moment, watching the replay of burning Zilani cities. Finally, he turned to his aide. "How many ships can we mobilize?" he asked quietly. EU and Dashby pulled up the fleet roster on her screen. "Sir, for a rescue mission? Maybe 50 vessels, or transports, medical ships, engineering corps." "No," Daeho interrupted, his eyes hardening like steel. How many ships for war? Yunbei's breath caught in her throat. She understood immediately. This wasn't about evacuation or humanitarian aid. This was about something far more serious. All of them, sir, she whispered. Every last one. Within 30 minutes, emergency signals were flashing across every human military installation on Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Captains were pulled from their beds. Engineers abandoned their shore leave. Marines loaded weapons they had hoped never to use. Captain Haiyan-Wu Li stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Iron Will, watching through the massive viewports as Earth's greatest fleet assembled in high orbit. Ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace, battleships bristling with railguns, carriers loaded with fighter squadrons, destroyers designed for close combat, and massive supply vessels to keep the fleet operational for months? Sir, his tactical officer reported, final count is 512 vessels. Everything from patrol boats to the new Titan-class battleships. Haiyan-Wu nodded grimly. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen a mobilization this complete. Every available ship, every trained crew, every weapon in humanity's arsenal was being committed to this single mission. What are we fighting, sir? Asked his young navigation officer. Something that made the mistake of asking humans for help, Haiyan-Wu replied, watching as the last stragglers joined the formation. And they're about to learn the difference between rescue and revenge. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was an extermination campaign. The bunker beneath Nexura shook with another massive explosion as Cathara huddled with the last survivors of her government. The air recyclers wheezed and sparked, barely keeping them alive in the toxic atmosphere the Vorth had created above ground. General Vex stared at the tactical display, showing nothing but red dots, enemy contacts covering every inch of their star system. It's over, he muttered, slumping against the wall. The swarm has consumed everything. Our orbital stations, our defense fleets, even the emergency shelters on the outer moons. Cathara closed her eyes, trying to block out the sounds of dying machinery and distant screams. 3 days had passed since she sent the desperate transmission. No one had answered. No one ever answered calls for help when the Vorth came. Suddenly, the sensor technician Yao Rose jerked upright at his station. Contact! Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. General Vex rushed to the display. Vorth reinforcements? No, sir, the signatures are wrong. These are ... metal ships. Artificial. Construction. Yalros's voice trembled with disbelief. Reading massive energy signatures, weapons systems, defensive shields. Tithra's heart hammered as she watched the tactical screen populate with new contacts. One ship appeared, then 10, then 50. The numbers kept climbing as more vessels materialized from the swirling vortex of hyperspace. 100 contacts, Yalros whispered. 200. 300. The entire bunker fell silent, except for the steady beeping of the sensors. Everyone stared at the impossible sight unfolding before them. 500 ships, Yalros finally announced, his voice barely audible. They sent 500 ships. Human fleets spread across the Zelani system like a vast constellation of metal and fire. Each vessel bristled with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. The largest ships stretched for kilometers, their hulls painted in the dark colors of war. Smaller vessels darted between them like hunting wolves, their engines leaving trails of blue plasma. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Soul's Fury, watching the tactical display as his fleet took position. The Zelani system was a graveyard of broken worlds and floating debris, but he could see pockets of survivors hiding in the ruins. Sir Lieutenant, Yunbai reported, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's the alien who sent the distress call. Put her through, Deho ordered. Kithra's blue face appeared on the main screen, her eyes wide with shock and hope. Behind her, the other Zelani survivors crowded around, staring at the human admiral with a mixture of fear and desperate gratitude. This is the human defense fleet, Deho announced, his voice carrying across all communication frequencies. We received your distress call. Where are the hostiles? Cathera struggled to find words, her mind reeling from the sight of the massive war fleet that had appeared like an answer to prayer. You came to fight, not to evacuate us? We came to end this. Commander Sungmin's voice cut in from the carrier Defiance. His ship launched squadron after squadron of fighters, each one armed with enough firepower to level a city. Point us toward these Vorth, we'll handle the rest. As if summoned by the challenge, the Vorth swarm began to stir. From the dark side of the system, where they had been feeding on the remnants of Zalani civilization, the alien horde detected the new arrivals. Their collective consciousness pulsed with anticipation and hunger. The Vorth ships were unlike anything in the known galaxy. Each vessel was a living thing, grown rather than built, with hulls that writhed and pulsed like diseased organs. They moved without engines, propelled by biological processes that defied physics. Some were as large as cities, others small enough to slip through defensive screens. All of them were hungry. Movement on the outer rim, reported Captain Young-ho from the destroyer Storm's Edge. His tactical display showed thousands of red dots beginning to shift and merge. Sir, they're massive. I'm reading biosignatures off the scale. The Vorth fleet approached like a living tide of darkness. They had no formation, no strategy beyond overwhelming their prey through sheer numbers. For centuries, this had been enough. Civilized species fled or died when the swarm arrived. None had ever stood and fought. Analysis complete, Yunbai announced. The hostile fleet numbers approximately 1 million vessels of various sizes. They appear to be biological constructs with no obvious weak points. Their approach pattern suggests they intend to engulf our formation. Young-ho shook his head in amazement. Sir, they're not using any formation at all. It's no tactical deployment. No reserve forces, they're just ... swarming. Admiral Deho studied the approaching horde with the calm eyes of a predator. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, rebels on Mars, and corporate mercenaries in the outer colonies. But this was different. This was what humanity had been preparing for without knowing it. A war against something that threatened not just their species, but the very concept of civilization itself. They don't know how to fight a real war, he said quietly, a grim smile crossing his weathered face. They've been hunting prey for so long, they've forgotten what it means to face a predator. The human fleet began to move, ships sliding into attack formations with practiced precision. Each captain knew their role. Each crew had trained for this moment without realizing it. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of war, turning violence into a science. All units, Deho commanded, his voice carrying to every ship. In the fleet, engage Pattern Omega. Show them what Earth's children learned in the fire. The Storm's Edge and her sister destroyers surged forward, their engines flaring brilliant blue. Behind them, the massive battleships charged their main. Guns, weapons that could crack moons and boil seas. The carriers launched their fighters in perfect formation. While the cruisers spread out to provide covering fire, Cathera watched from her bunker as the two forces rushed toward each other, the chaotic swarm of alien devourers and the precise formation of human warships. For the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The Deathworlders had come to war, and the galaxy was about to learn why they had been feared and quarantined for so long. The Vorth thought they were facing another prey species, but they were wrong. They were about to meet the apex predators of the Milky Way, the first collision between the human fleet. And the Vorth swarm lit up space like a newborn star. What had been silent darkness suddenly exploded into a hurricane of plasma fire, missile trails, and the screams of dying ships. The Vorth came at them like a black tide, expecting another easy feast. Instead, they crashed into a wall of precisely coordinated violence. Lieutenant Sa-Young gripped the controls of her Viper-class fighter as she dove straight into the heart of the swarm. Around her, the organic shapes of Vorth bioships twisted and writhed, their surfaces covered in feeding tubes and razor-sharp spines that dripped with acidic fluids. These creatures had devoured entire civilizations. but they had never faced a pilot trained in the knife-fighting academies of Luna Base. Wolf. 7 to Wolf Leader, she called over the comm, her voice steady despite pulling 8 Gs in a spiraling attack run. I've got a cluster of medium bioships trying to flank the Soul's Fury. Permission to engage? Negative Wolf 7, came the reply from her squadron leader. Maintain formation, and So-Young cut him off as she spotted something that made her blood boil. 3 massive Vorth creatures were surrounding a damaged Zilani civilian transport, their feeding tubes already extending toward the hull. She could see the terrified alien faces pressed against the viewports. This is Wolf 7, requesting permission to go knife fighting, she announced. Diving toward the trapped transport. Captain Minho's voice crackled from the cruiser Vengeance, which was locked in a brutal exchange with a house-sized Vorth creature. Granted, all fighters, close quarters combat, authorized. Show them how humans hunt. So-Young smiled grimly and switched her weapons to close-range mode. Plasma cannons charged with a high whine as she closed to point-blank range with the nearest bioship. The Vorth creature tried to swing one of its massive appendages at her fighter. But So-Young had been flying combat missions since she was 16. She rolled under the attack and unleashed a concentrated burst that tore through the creature's soft underbelly. Purple blood and organic chunks splattered across her canopy as the bioship convulsed and died. The other 2 creatures turned toward her, their multiple eyes glowing with alien rage, but So-Young was already moving. She spiraled between them like a dancer, her cannons firing in short, precise bursts that found every weak spot in their organic armor. Wolf 7 to all units, she called out as the second creature exploded in a shower of biological debris. These things are built for overwhelming scared prey. Hit them hard and fast. They can't handle real combat. Across the battlefield, human fighters swarmed through the Vorth ranks like angry hornets. The bioships had been designed to terrify and consume fleeing enemies, not to dogfight with pilots who considered aerial combat an art form. Lieutenant Tehine of Wolf's squadron performed a textbook splitus maneuver that brought him onto the tail of a creature 3 times his fighter's size, then calmly emptied his entire missile load into its brain cluster. But the real shock came. When the human capital ships opened fire, the battleship Thunder of Earth unleashed its main guns, sending streams of superheated plasma across the void that cut through Vorth bioships like a blade through silk. The creature's organic hulls, which could resist most energy weapons, simply vaporized under the focused fury of weapons designed by a species that had turned warfare into a science commander. J1 watched the space battle from the assault bay of the Marine transport Iron Fist, but his attention was focused on a different kind of fight. His target was one of the massive Vorth mother ships, kilometer-long creature that pulsed with bioluminescent veins and spawned smaller bioships from organic ports along its flanks. Boarding pods away, announced the pilot as 12 armored capsules shot toward the mothership's hull. Each pod carried a squad of human Marines equipped with the deadliest close combat gear their species had ever developed. J1's pod punched through the mothership's outer membrane with a wet tearing sound. Immediately, toxic atmosphere flooded in, but his enhanced combat armor sealed automatically. Around him, his soldiers moved with the deadly grace of predators, born on a world where everything wanted to kill them. The interior of the Vorth ship was a nightmare of organic corridors that pulsed like arteries. Walls leaked acidic fluids, and the floor squelched under their boots like walking on raw meat. Bioluminescent growths provided sickly green light that cast twisted shadows everywhere. "Stay tight," J1 ordered through his cum. "These things are connected to a hive mind. Once they know we're here, they'll throw everything at us." As if summoned by his words, the first Vorth warrior forms came rushing down the corridor. These creatures were different from the bioships. They moved on multiple legs like giant spiders, with arms that ended in bone blades and mouths full of needle-sharp teeth. They had been designed to overwhelm boarding parties through sheer terror and numbers. But they had never faced human Marines. Sergeant Eugen was the first to open fire, her assault rifle sending streams of explosive rounds into the leading creature. The bullets tore through its carapace and detonated inside its body, dropping it instantly. Behind her, Corporal Dongsu fired his plasma rifle in controlled bursts, each shot precisely placed to hit vital organs. The Vorth warriors kept coming, pouring out of side passages and dropping from ceiling vents. But the humans moved like they were dancing, each Marine covering their teammates' flanks while advancing steadily deeper into the ship. Their weapons fired with mechanical precision, and every shot found its mark. Sir Eugene called out as they reached a massive chamber filled with pulsing organic machinery. "I think we found something important. The whole ship seems to be connected to this thing." Jaewon studied the chamber's centerpiece, a massive, brain-like structure covered in neural pathways that glowed with electrical activity. Cables of organic matter ran from it in all directions, disappearing into the ship's walls. The air around it hummed with psychic energy. "Command Nexus," he said grimly, pulling an antimatter charge from his belt. "The whole ship's nervous system runs through here. Kill this. We kill the ship." He attached the charge to the brain structure while his Marines held the perimeter. More Vorth warriors were coming, their alien screams echoing through the corridors, but it was too late. "Then we disconnect it," Jaewon said, activating the charge timer. Permanently. The explosion tore through the mothership's nervous system like lightning through water. The massive creature convulsed in space, its bioship spawning ports sealing shut, its weapons falling silent. Through the quantum link that connected all Vorth, the agony of the dying mothership spread to every member of the swarm. For the first time in millennia, the Vorth collective consciousness felt something they had forgotten existed. As more human boarding parties struck other motherships, as their fighters carved through the swarm like wolves among sheep, as their capital ships turned bioship after bioship into floating wreckage, the Vorth experienced the emotion that had driven their prey species to extinction. They felt fear. Admiral Daeho stood before the massive tactical display that filled the entire wall of his command center aboard the Soul's Fury. The holographic map showed the Zalani system and 5 neighboring star systems, each one marked with thousands of icons, representing ships, stations, and worlds. What had started as a rescue mission had become something far more comprehensive: the complete extermination of an entire species. The display painted a picture of methodical destruction. Red icons representing Vorth bioships blinked out one by one as human forces systematically hunted down every last creature. Blue markers showed human task forces spreading across multiple systems, each one following predetermined search patterns designed to leave no hiding place unexplored. "Sir, incoming reports from all fronts," Lieutenant Yoon Bai announced from her station. The young officer's face was pale, but determined as she coordinated communications from dozens of battle groups. "Colonel Haijin is requesting permission to speak."
Out.
"Put her through," Daeho ordered. The colonel's battle-scarred face appeared. On the secondary display, behind her, Marines in powered armor were dragging the corpse of what looked like a massive, bloated spider from a cave system. The creature was easily the size of a city bus, its multiple egg sacs still twitching with dying life. "Sir, we've confirmed the Vorth reproductive cycle," Haijin reported, wiping alien blood from her helmet visor. "They reproduce through specialized Queen Ship's massive biovessels that carry millions of eggs. My assault teams have eliminated 17 queens so far across 4 systems. The hive consciousness is fragmenting as we speak." Daeho nodded grimly. "Casualties, light, sir. These creatures are built for terrorizing civilians, not fighting soldiers. My biggest problem is keeping the men from getting overconfident." Another voice crackled over the cum system, Captain Bo-young from the stealth frigate. Silent death. His ship was invisible to most sensors, designed for deep reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines.
Admiral.
"We've located their primary breeding world in the Cathara system," Bo-young reported. "It's, sir, you need to see this to believe it. The entire planet is one massive organism. I'm reading billions of Vorth eggs in various stages of development. Recommend immediate orbital bombardment." The tactical display shifted to show a sickly green world covered in what looked like tumor-like growths. Each growth pulsed with its own rhythm, and streams of smaller bioships moved between them like antibodies in a bloodstream. This was where the nightmare had been born. Negative on orbital bombardment, Deho replied. We're going to need something more permanent. Contact the engineering corps. I want that planet cracked open like an egg. Lieutenant Commander Sung-ho looked up from his station in the psychological warfare section. His screen showed intercepted Vorth communications, mostly psychic transmissions, that had been converted into visual and audio data by human technology. The aliens were experiencing something they had never felt before: genuine terror. Sir, the Psych War protocols are working beyond expectations, Sung-ho reported with grim satisfaction. We've been flooding their communication channels with footage of our victories. Images of destroyed Queen ships, Marines tearing through their warrior forms, capital ships turning their motherships into debris clouds. The collective consciousness is having what can only be described as a nervous breakdown. On his screens, intercepted Vorth transmissions showed the aliens' growing panic. The hive mind that had operated with cold efficiency for millennia was now filled with conflicting impulses. Some clusters wanted to flee, others to fight, still others to hide. The unity that had made them unstoppable was cracking under the relentless pressure of human warfare across the galaxy. Other species watched the systematic destruction of the Vorth swarm with a mixture of awe and horror. The Altarian Empire, which had refused to help the Zilani, now monitored human fleet movements with growing unease. The Centauri Federation recalled their ambassadors from Earth, suddenly realizing that the primitive species they had quarantined might be the most dangerous predators in known space. Captain Minho of the cruiser Vengeance coordinated the blockade of 3 Vorth-controlled systems, ensuring that no bioship could escape the net humanity had thrown around them. His tactical display showed the closing trap, human forces moving in perfect coordination to eliminate every escape route. Admiral, he reported, we've got movement in the Helix Nebula. Long-range sensors detect approximately 50,000 Vorth bioships trying to break through our perimeter. They're making a run for deep space. Tinsen Ji-hai from the intelligence. Ship Eye of Earth confirmed the report. Her vessel bristled with sensor arrays and quantum computers that could track individual ships across light years of space. Nothing moved in this sector without her knowledge. Sir, confirmed massive retreat patterns across all fronts, she announced. The remaining Vorth are abandoning their breeding worlds and trying to flee the galaxy entirely. They're heading for the Galactic Rim at maximum speed. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Every officer understood what this meant. The Vorth swarm, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was running in absolute terror from a species they had never heard of until a week ago. Admiral Deho studied the tactical display, watching as thousands of red icons moved toward the galaxy's edge. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator deciding the fate of its prey. Sir, Lieutenant Yunbai asked quietly, orders for the pursuit. Squadrons. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, thinking of all the civilizations the Vorth had consumed, all the innocent lives they had devoured, all the worlds they had left as lifeless husks. Then he thought of humanity's children, growing up in a galaxy where such creatures existed. The choice was simple. Negative, no survivors. No exceptions, he said, his voice carrying to every ship in the human fleet. Deploy the hunter-killer squadrons. Follow them to the edge of the universe if necessary. This ends here, today, forever. The galaxy was about to learn what happened. When Deathworlders went to war, Vorth had made the fatal mistake of threatening something humans cared about. Now they would face the ultimate consequence of that decision: complete extinction at the hands of Earth's children. The age of the Vorth was over. The age of humanity's guardianship was just beginning. 3 months after the first human ship dropped out of hyperspace above the burning Zilani homeworld, Captain Sayoung fired the final shot of the war. Her fighter's plasma cannon lit up the darkness between galaxies as the last Vorth bioship, a wounded, fleeing creature the size of a space station, exploded into cosmic dust. The shockwave rippled across empty space, carrying with it the end of a species that had terrorized the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Wolf 7 to Fleet Command, So-Young reported, her voice tired but satisfied. Target destroyed. That's the last of them, sir. The Vorth are extinct. Across the human fleet, cheers erupted on every bridge. But Admiral Deho felt no joy, only the cold satisfaction of a job completed. The swarm that had consumed 100 civilizations was gone. Eliminated by a species the galaxy had dismissed as primitive quarantine subjects. The irony wasn't lost on him. The Galactic Council had ignored Zilani's pleas for help, writing them off as another doomed species. Now those same council members sat in emergency session on their capital world of Nexus Prime, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. Cathara stood in the council chamber's center, her blue skin pale under the harsh lights. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched with expressions ranging from awe to terror. These were the same beings who had deleted her distress calls, who had declared her people a lost cause.
Oh.
Now they hung on her every word. The humans have established what they call the Deathworld Doctrine, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Any species that preys upon the innocent will face total extermination. They are recruiting other Deathworld species to enforce this policy. The Altarian ambassador, a tall creature with golden skin and multiple arms, shifted nervously in his seat. Surely they don't mean to police the entire galaxy. The logistics alone would be impossible. Kithra's expression hardened. Tell that. To the Vorth? Oh wait, you can't. There aren't any left. A massive holographic display materialized in the chamber's center, showing Admiral Deho's weathered face. Behind him stood beings that most council members had only heard about in whispered stories. Representatives from the quarantined death worlds that civilized species feared to approach. There was General Vex Thala from Infernus, a world where the atmosphere itself was poisonous, and the surface temperature could melt steel. Her people had evolved in volcanic regions, developing natural armor and resistance to toxins that made them perfect soldiers. Beside her stood Commander Griktar from the ice world Glacius, where his species had survived planetary winter by becoming the ultimate hunters, capable of tracking prey across frozen wastelands for months. Council members Deho began, his voice calm but carrying an undertone that made everyone listen carefully. The age of parasites is over. We are the new guardians of this galaxy. Those who choose peace will find protection. Those who choose predation will find extinction. The Centauri Federation's elderly representative raised a trembling hand. Idmarie, surely we can discuss this civilized manner? The Council has maintained galactic peace for centuries by ignoring genocide when it was inconvenient to act. Deho interrupted. Your peace was built on the graves of species like the Zilani, who you abandoned to die. That ends now. Commander Yunbai watched from the Soul's fury as the council session continued. She had been promoted after the Vorth campaign, now serving as Deho's chief of staff for what humanity was calling the Guardian Fleet. The sight of the galaxy's most powerful beings squirming in their seats as they realized the balance of power had completely shifted, brought a smile to her face. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Within weeks of the Vorth's destruction, distress calls had started pouring in from across the galaxy. Pirates who had operated with impunity suddenly found human warships dropping out of hyperspace above their hideouts. Slave traders discovered that their merchandise was under the protection of beings who viewed slavery as an executable offense. Captain Minho commanded one of the new Guardian squadrons, leading a task force of human and Deathworld vessels. On patrol through the Outer Rim territories, his latest report told the story of the new galaxy they were creating. Admiral, he had reported just yesterday we intercepted a Drachnary slave convoy in the Vega sector. When we demanded they release their prisoners, they actually tried to fight us. It took exactly 12 minutes to disable their entire fleet. The freed slaves included representatives from 6 different species, including some we'd never encountered before. The psychological impact was even more profound than the military victories. Species that had preyed on others for millennia were suddenly looking over their shoulders, knowing that somewhere in the dark between stars, the Guardians were watching. The mere rumor of human ships in a system was enough to make pirates abandon their operations and flee to distant sectors. But it wasn't just fear that was changing the galaxy. The Deathworld species were proving to be natural protectors. Harsh home environments had bred them for survival, but also for loyalty and determination. When they committed to protecting something, they did so with absolute dedication. Lieutenant Commander Sung Ho had established the Guardian Communication Network, allowing any species to send distress calls directly to human command. Response. Time was unprecedented. Often, help arrived before the victims even realized they needed it. Sir Ensign Ji Hai reported from her intelligence station. We're receiving thank you messages from 17 different systems today. The Kefri Collective is requesting permanent Guardian presence after we eliminated the pirate clans that had been raiding their trade routes for decades. The galaxy was learning to sleep peacefully for the first time in centuries. Children of peaceful species grew up hearing stories of the Guardians who watched over them from the darkness of space. Parents no longer feared that their worlds might be attacked by creatures like the Vorth. Meanwhile, in the shadows between solar systems, potential predators weighed their options and chose different paths. The Scaran Empire, which had been planning to expand into Zelani's space, quietly withdrew their fleets and focused on internal development. The Nexus Pirate Confederacy simply dissolved, its members fleeing to the galactic edge or abandoning their criminal careers entirely. Admiral Deho stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars that no longer held the same terrors they once had. Behind him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring communications from across the galaxy and coordinating response missions to dozens of systems. Sir, Lieutenant Yun Bai approached with a datapad the latest patrol reports. The Helix sector is clear of hostile activity. The Andromeda Trading Alliance is reporting record profits since the pirate threat was eliminated. And we've received formal requests from 12 new species asking to join the Guardian Coalition. Deho nodded, satisfied. Humanity had answered. One desperate distress call and inadvertently become the galaxy's apex predators. But more than that, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before, protectors, who asked for nothing in return except the knowledge that innocents could sleep safely. The Deathworlders weren't just guardians now, they were the final word in galactic justice, and the galaxy was better for it. From Earth to the rim worlds, from the core systems to the frontier colonies, a new era had begun. The age of predators was over. The age of guardians had begun. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth that would echo through the ages. Never threaten something a human cares about. They don't send aid, they send fleets. The end.